Hi y'all, welcome to the Craft Table Podcast. My name is Tori. If you want to see anything I'm working on or maybe anything that I've mentioned here today, you can find me at Instagram or the Making app under @the Craft Table Podcast, or you can shoot me an email if you have any questions or want any more resources, because I'm going to be talking about a little bit of like fleece preparation today. So if you want more resources or other like more in-depth conversation about it, you can also shoot me an email at thecrafttablepodcast@gmail.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm more active on the Making app, but I do also check my Instagram. So either way, you can reach me in multiple ways. But today, I just wanted to start off and say that don't have a whole lot to share crafting wise or like production wise, and I also am not feeling so great, so I decided this week I will touch base on a few things I've done and kind of like what I've been working on, but I really wanted to focus on the whole fleece preparation, or at least getting a fleece and then how it's sheared and then taken to hand spinners, and just kind of like that whole experience, especially because I just finished washing my entire fin, like I think it was 2 pounds prior to wash, 2.5 pounds prior to wash of my fin fleece. And I have some feelings, and I've talked about this in the past about my feelings of it. It had a lot of second cuts. Like, I don't think I could get through a single soak without second cut, and I usually do like 4 or 5 soaks per batch, including soap and no soap. But I would find second cuts every soak, and I would still find them afterwards with carding, and I still am. Oh, there's a tiny shadow. But like I still was, and I really wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about that, especially since Maryland Sheep and Wool's coming up, and you guys might be looking to buy fleeces, especially if it's like the first time buying a fleece, or even like your second or third time, and kind of what that means, or if you're just curious about it in general. I don't think this particular topic of spinning is mentioned too often in a lot of the podcasts I've watched, a lot of the audio podcasts I've listened to. It's just not a topic that gets addressed too frequently, and I think that's a shame because it puts the hand spinner at a disadvantage. And so I figured it would be important to talk about it today. So just to give you a basic understanding of what happens before the fleece arrives at a show or a sale of any kind, the farmer will themselves, or they will hire or get volunteers, however it's done, they will get shearers. And the shearers are the ones that make, aside from like the growth of the fleece and the work that the farmer does, the shearers are the second most important person when it comes to getting a fleece ready to go for a mill, for the hand spinner, for whoever. I know in the US that it's slowly dying. There's several really good books on this, especially if you're into agriculture in any way. Clara Parks has a really good one that touches base on this a little bit, called Vanishing Fleece, where fleeces in the US aren't really being, a lot of the time they'll just get thrown out because that's not the main source of income for farmers with sheep. It's their meat and the meat products that come from sheep. So most of the time, if it's not being sold to the military or it's not being sold at these like fairs and stuff, they're getting thrown out, or they're not really like high importance for them because they're not getting enough money for the actual quality of the fleece, which is really sad, but that's the reality that the textile world is in right now, especially because I live outside of Philadelphia, and it was known as like a huge textile factory location. And I think within the last 2 years, most of them, the ones that were remaining, are starting to shut down. Like the one that Harrisville Design used here in Philadelphia shut down just last year. Like it just is it's dwindling. And so Shearing for hand fleecers or hand spinners can be so important to the process, but it's just not something that gets really talked about anymore because of this loss in market value of fleece, or just wool in general of any kind. So the whole thing is that it's important to shear a sheep a proper way in order to use that wool successfully and to the best of the chance or possibility that you have, whether it be a mill or a hand spinner like myself and like others in the community. And particularly, it's even more important for us than it is for a mill, because we're the ones doing the work by hand. And I feel like the fleece that I purchased, I don't know if the shearer was really mindful of what they were doing. So what happens is that there's a huge day in spring usually, or late summer, early fall, like this whole time period from spring to summer and early fall is when shearing happens for sheep. And then they're sold at markets, at vending shows and things like that. So this is the prime time for shearing, and it could be volunteers, it could be professionals. There's a really good person on TikTok and Instagram called Right Choice Shearing, and I'll add their information in the down bar below. But they are really, they do a really good job of explaining the process and demonstrating what happens, and like shearing for hand spinners and then shearing just to get the sheep clear or the alpaca clear of their heavy wool and fiber. So like there's a big difference in the way that you need to treat shearing depending on who your market is, or if you even have a market. And when farmers and shepherds and people who deal with sheep and want to sell those fleeces to crafters, there's a higher expectation of the quality of fleece. And unfortunately, that's not always the case, especially for people starting out or learning, or just like not really committing to this part of the market. And I think I kind of might have run into that, and I don't feel comfortable saying, I've said the name before, but I don't feel comfortable repeating the farm's name, just because I don't know, it just doesn't feel good to disparage someone during a learning process for others. So I did purchase this particular fleece at a show, Rhinebeck, and I've talked about this in the audio podcast if you guys want to go back and listen to that. But when you're selling it at one of those fleece sales, it's expected. There's an expectation of a higher quality fleece than there is if you were just buying it off Facebook Marketplace or something like that. There is an expectation and a quality kind of, not necessarily a requirement, but definitely like it's elevated compared to like if you were just going to the farmer directly and being like, hey, I know you're shearing sheep, can I have your fleece? Like, it's very different, and there is grading happening and things like that. And some types of wool, it's easier to see when they're second cuts compared to others, and I think that was my problem here too, is that I ended up with a very curly fleece, and it's really hard to see those second cuts when you're looking at the fleece. At least for me it was, until I started soaking it and carding it. And that, it's really disappointing, and I'm really bummed that I spent almost $100 on a fleece that is not to the standard that I would have expected for $100, and for being seen and getting such high points for some of these categories it was listed in. And it also was one of the last fleeces available when I went there on Sunday and back in Rhinebeck. So that could also be an indicator that maybe it wasn't great, but like I just didn't get it. So I want to bring that to you guys now, just to share my experience and maybe help someone who might be considering buying a fleece now within the next several months. So when I was looking at the fleece on display, my understanding is that the shearer was mindful of second cuts. And when I talk about second cuts, I mean that a shearer's job when they are prepping or getting ready to sell a fleece to handcrafters is that they want to get as close to the skin the first time and not do a second pass through, because that second pass through is going to get, I'm going to show this to you, it's going to get these little bits and bobs. So like here's a tiny one, like super tiny. Here's another second cut. Like I have a whole handful, as you can see, like there's quite a bit of like baby scraps, and that doesn't cart out very well, and it causes lumps in and neps in your wool. And I've noticed that as I'm spinning, my spinning wheel's behind because I'm lower this week with my new chair, but which is why I'm pointing that way. But like when I've been spinning on my second bobbin in particular, I've noticed how bad it's been and how many neps or how many times I've had to slow down and pull out these tiny little baby cuts that shouldn't be there. And the whole point of a shearer when they're trained or working to have these fleeces sold at shows or shown or purchased by handcrafters is to ensure that it's the cleanest single sweep that you can do to get the longest amount of fiber, because fiber is graded on the length of the staple length, which is very common way to express that and the standard in the industry. So they want as long as possible of a staple length, but when you do a second sweep through, because you didn't get as close as you could without hurting the sheep, you've cut your staple length, and that's really, really bad. It's just not great for the product and for spinning, and that's kind of what I've experienced, because I'm going to show you in this fleece there, I have a little section of my last bit that I washed. You can kind of see the staple length here, but like this was the staple length. That's about 2 inches. That's pretty good for a fine wool. And what happened is they would cut here, like that's how far they would cut into the fleece. So then you'd have this second cut that they would then come through and get again, and it would result in these baby pieces that get stuck in the wool, and you don't see it until you start washing and hand carding. And that can be really hard to see, especially with things like when it looks like this after you wash it or in the bag. Like it's very much a bundled together kind of grouping of staple lengths, and it's hard to see those second cuts if they exist. And that's on the farmer and the shearer. That's something that if they wanted to sell to handcrafters or do shows, in particular with an expectation of getting their fleece graded, that like this is part of the process of ensuring that it doesn't happen. And I mentioned previously the right choice shearing. This individual was someone who was trained and went to school for it and educates people and does work in this field. And I'm not sure if they have a particular pronoun, but they are really, really good at breaking it down, better than I am. And they also give examples of like how they would shear something that, like I said earlier, is for hand carders versus not. And I think they would be able to also like give a very good picture of what I'm explaining if I can't really explain it too well here to you guys. But I think that is one of the most important first steps to getting a fleece out the door and into the hands of handcrafters who are going to process this wool on their own, or if they send it to a mill or whatever. Like, this is one of the most important steps outside of growing the fleece and taking care of the sheep and making sure you have a healthy flock. It makes the difference of a good fleece versus a bad fleece, regardless of like, because like I can tell, I've told you, like I enjoy spinning this fleece when I get it carded up and when it feels good. It's really soft, it's really fun, the colors are great. Like there are so many good aspects to this fleece that the second cuts are so devastatingly disappointing. And it's really frustrating to know that I spent $50 a pound basically on this fleece. And it was not, I don't feel like I got my money's worth, and that's really unfortunate. So when you're looking at purchasing a fleece at these shows, I would very highly recommend going through the bag, looking at the ends, seeing if there's any second cuts, if you can tell if there's shorter staple length versus other sections of the fleece or within the same section of the fleece. Maybe asking if the farmer or the shearer is available, maybe asking about like if they particularly do this for hand carders or handcrafters, or if they are just doing it as a byproduct. So not really focusing too much on the fleece itself, but rather of, oh, I noticed that there are people who will buy this at these shows, so let me just keep the fleece that gets cut and sell it. And I unfortunately don't have that much of an insight into the mindset of those who participate in raising flocks of sheep. I come from a family of ranchers and farmers who primary focus was horses and cattle outside of their wheat and whatever odds and ends they were selling, hay, or growing rather. And that doesn't require shearing, and it doesn't require additional byproduct of the animal outside of rodeos and meat production. And that's a very different world to, I think, raising llamas, alpacas, Angora rabbits, sheep, of course. Like it's very different. And so I can't really give you an educated understanding of what happens, but I can at least tell you today like what it feels like as a handcrafter. So when you go in and are looking at these fleeces, I would definitely recommend just taking the time to look to see if there are second cuts, or if there's issues with the fleece, or if the staple length is good enough for you. Like, I don't think I've said in previous episodes, I won't be getting something that is shorter than this ever again. It just doesn't card the way that I want it to, and it takes a lot of work. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now with my fin fleece. I'm happy to finally have it all washed. I'm happy to no longer be dealing with these second cuts as much. I'm happy to be moving on. I will be running into it as a hand card, but it's not something I'm going to see visibly as frequently with the hand washing of my fleece now that it's completely done. I don't think I have the full 2 pounds anymore. I think there was quite a bit of dirt that probably weighed down the fleece. There wasn't a whole lot of lanolin just because this was a medium wool, and once you get out of fine wools, the lanolin production starts to die down a little bit, and it's just the type of sheep that you're dealing with. And that's where fin are. They can be fine, they can have fine wool and be very soft, but they can also be on the rougher end spectrum of the medium to I'm forgetting what the word is after medium, because it's fine, medium, and I can't remember. If I remember, I'll let you know. But basically, once you get past fine wools on fine wool sheep breeds and like other fiber producing animals, the lanolin production goes down significantly. Well, I mean, there's not even lanolin in alpaca. It's just dust. So just sheep. Sorry about that, guys. Just sheep. Oof, I am not thinking clearly today. But that's just kind of where I'm at with my fleece. I don't really have too much else outside of that to update you on. I would be curious to know if you guys would want to see hand carding demonstrations or talking about high and low twist singles implies and how that impacts your yarn. Those are some things that I kind of have in the back of my head that I'm thinking of sharing with y'all. But if there is something specific that you do want to hear, please let me know, because this project is going to take me quite a bit of time. I expect it to take me 6 months, just because don't spin every day. I don't hand card every day. I am doing it by hand on hand carders and not a drum carder, so that takes even longer. So I'm just expecting it to take quite some time, so there's plenty of time to like talk about these steps in between and after and all of the just everything. So if you have something specific you want to hear about, or you are interested in what I've mentioned today, please let me know, and I'm happy to like post a video specifically on just those things, or like, how do I do this, or how do you do that, or what does this mean? Like, I don't think there's enough resources online that really share that for visual learners, so I'm happy to like share that now with you guys because it's helped me when I've found videos, so I kind of want to just put that back into the community. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say about my fleece or my spinning project. I'm still just going. I'm almost done with my second bobbin, and then I'll start on my third. I'm trying really hard not to just ply up the first and second bobbin as soon as I'm done. I can't make any promises. I just am so curious to see what the yarn will look like. So we'll see. I don't know. My goal, like I said last week, was to do the first and third and spin it together, just so that I have the most consistent yarn I could get from this project, but we'll see. I might be a little too impatient. So outside of that, I don't have anything else spinning related. I'm not working on any spinning hand spun projects right now. I did purchase some fiber online last week. So once that comes in, I'll definitely share that. That's going to be a combo spin, and I'm looking forward to it. But as of right now, I'm not working actively on anything. I've been trying to finish up. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to kick the camera. I'm just trying to get some of the other projects I have on my needles going and finished and out the door, quote unquote, out the door, so that I could get to my hand spun projects. And I want to continue. And that fleece, since I only have one wheel and so many bobbins, that's going to be the predominant project that I have going for quite some time, spinning wise too. So nothing too exciting there. We'll go ahead and move on to my knitting. So I'm just gonna go down here. I showed you last week my summer crop tee, I think is what it is, from Jessie Maid's Designs, using Plies and Hellhound Silky base, which is a BFL, a superwash BFL silk base, and it's really, really beautiful. It's very, very nice and shiny. That I was working on that, and I do want to get it done before next weekend. So I've been very, very diligent in this project, and I'm happy with it. It's been really nice. I stayed up a little late last night because I happily have finished the front and the back, and I have joined the sleeves, or the shoulder pieces together on both ends. And so I stayed up late last night getting that done. But it's, I'm not super pleased with how large the neckline is because I did try it on last night. It's pretty wide. It's pretty wide, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. I might come in and do an I-cord bind off just to bring it in a little bit because it was like kind of falling off my shoulders, and I don't want that. I don't like playing with, like, I don't like a tight collar, but I also don't like trying to like pull up my sleeves every time I move. So I might do an I-cord bind off if I have enough yarn, but I'm gonna show you now how much I have left of my second skein. So I might just be dealing with the standard pattern neckline, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna make my sleeves too long, and I'm hoping this little tiny amount will get me through the baby sleeves because it's a tee. It's not got long sleeves, and I actually started my sleeves today. I picked up for my, was it my right sleeve, and it is, I'm doing it not on DPNs, but on my circular needle that I was using for the body. So this is how much I've gotten done. Not too much. So let me get closer to the camera so you can kind of see. It's not a lot. I started here and out, so I'm getting there, but I have about a little over half an inch to go before I start the folded hem, because I would like to have it match my bottom hem. It's flipping out pretty badly, so because of that folded hemline, so I'm gonna have to block it. So what I'm gonna do is finish my sleeves this week. I'm gonna block it, see if I have any leftover scraps lying around long enough to do an I-cord bind off for the neckline, and then hopefully it should be done. But I'm getting pretty close. I spent most of the week watching Our Flag Means Death and what's Gentleman Jack on HBO Max. Those two shows, I've already watched Gentleman Jack, but there's a second season coming out now at the end of this month, so I just wanted a refresher. And Our Flag Means Death is another really great queer show that I highly recommend. It was a great comedy while I was slugging through the front and back pieces of this tee. I'm happy to have knit it, and I know it's gonna get a lot of wear. It's especially from the content of the wool. It's rough doing purling and knit stitches back and forth on such a large size, because I am in the plus size range. So it takes a lot of willpower for me to stick to it, even though I am a monogamous knitter, purely because I have so many other projects that I desperately want to get started and I'm fantasizing about, which is a little dangerous when you're trying to get something done under a self-imposed deadline. So hopefully next week I will be able to show you, and maybe even wear it on the podcast, we'll see, my summer crop tee from Jessie Made Designs. And again, the yarn is, I don't know if you can see the shine. I really wish you could, but a little bit. You can kind of see the shine in the sunshine. The shine of the silk from the light, the natural light. A little bit. Yeah, maybe a little bit. It's beautiful either way. I love it. It's pretty mauves. I mean, if you see my home, I tend to have I have a taste for the pinks and the pale pinks and the dirty pinks and mauves. So this fits my wardrobe and lifestyle pretty well. So I think it'll get a lot of wear once I finish it. And my goal is to have it done by next podcast recording so that I can show it to y'all and tell you if I made any changes or adaptations to the pattern. Other than that, I have been working on my mug rug, which I talked about last week with you, and where I had the little hexie flower basted onto its backing. So I spent, shortly after that episode, I went ahead and almost finished it. So I'm working on the binding right now. It's pretty messy and I've made a few mistakes, but I'm doing it by hand instead of a sewing machine. So it's been a very, very high learning curve for me, which is good. It's been very interesting and keeping my attention, but it means there's a lot of mistakes, but that's okay with me. I'm okay with that. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I'm not done yet, obviously, but it's pretty close to being done. Once I have it tacked down on the front, I'll then just take this and fold it over the edge and then baste it to the back. And the back is the same as the front. I didn't have a whole lot of fabric I don't really have a fabric stash. So I just used what I had, and I think it looks really good since the front is so overtaken with my hexie, my English paper piecing hexie. So it's nice to have that on the back again. And you can kind of see it. It's got little gold and its own kind of little flower hexagonal patterning. And then up close is this guy here. So yeah, that's almost done, and that's really been all that I've been making. I am just been steadily working on different projects, and they're all slow going, so nothing too exciting. I do have quite a few things coming in the mail that I'll be sharing with y'all. Some books. I also have some new knitting needles that I'm looking forward to, and that fiber I mentioned. So I did make a few purchases recently that I am excited to share with you. And in fact, one of my bigger purchases is coming in today. Unfortunately, I didn't have it yesterday. They were a little delayed, so I couldn't share it with you this week, but I will be sharing it with you next week. So I don't have any acquisitions to throw in this week. I'm not very much into buying a whole lot for myself, so the acquisitions will probably be very little until certain times of the year, like Maryland Sheep and Wool and Rhinebeck and the New Jersey Sheep and Wool and stuff like that. So that'll be coming. Other than that, I haven't really been working on anything. I haven't been feeling too great, so I've just kind of been trying to take it slow. I have definitely spent a lot of time on the couch playing Elden Ring, because I am someone who games as well as crafts and reads, so I've split my time quite a bit in between these different things, and Elden Ring has kept my attention quite a bit. So I would knit during, like, after I've died for the 50th time and need a break, I'd knit. And then I would go back to just beating my head against a wall with some of the gaming mechanics, but it's okay. It's a really good game. It's been interesting. So yeah, it's been pretty quiet here. I will be having some friends come out of town to visit me, so my podcasting, is it next week? Yeah, next week might be at a different time or a little bit of a weirder time. But I definitely will make sure that it's posted on Tuesday, even if it means that I record a little bit earlier and then just wait until Tuesday to post. So I'll definitely be on time, but the next few weeks are going to be a little hectic, so I don't know how much I'll be like able to share progress wise. But my goal is to hopefully at least have some knitting started, particularly hand spun knitting projects started once my needles come in, so that I have more needles to work with instead of like my 1 or 2 pairs that I religiously use and cling to. So that'll give me some more variety and ability to work on more than one thing at a time. Other than that, I am looking forward to Maryland Sheep and Wool. My best friend / neighbor and I are gonna go down together, and she might be bringing her little one, so it might be 3 of us or just 2 of us, but I'm looking forward to going and spending the day. I am also really looking forward to just having more spinning and getting more spinning done. I'm currently, as you can see, I have a new chair this week, and I did post on my social media about how I went to an estate sale. I've been working on like sincerely redecorating and actually finally decorating my home that I bought a couple years ago. It's been really hard with the pandemic because I bought in April of 2020, and then went into contract February 2020. So life hasn't been too easy in the last 2 years, and so I haven't really had a time to go about decorating my home. So this was like one of the first steps of like making my spinning corner feel a little good. So I'm looking forward to getting some more spinning done, doing some things with friends in my knitting group, and spinning in the next few weeks, especially as the sun and the weather gets better. I'm wondering if you guys have anything that you like to do when the weather starts to get better and it starts to warm up. Like, do you have some activities that you like to do specifically during this time of year, or are you looking forward to doing something new this year? Are you also looking forward to Maryland Sheep and Wool or other spinning activities? I know Ply Away happened this past weekend. Totally forgot it was going forward until my other really good friend, her Instagram account is knits_and_bonnets, and I'll put her information down below, but like she did an amazing wrap up and just kind of like day by day recording of what she learned and what was going on. And if I'm going to share that in the the description below so that you guys can see that. But if you are interested in like a purely spinning activity, unfortunately, or a conference rather, unfortunately this is already passed, but it might be something you guys can look at and into next year. They also have magazines, so it might be a good thing for you guys to see and look into if you haven't already. I really like their magazine, the Ply magazine. It's got a lot of really good resources and information, and from the sounds of it, from my friend Roberta, that conference was like a really, really good learning experience and like just exposure to the world of spinning, and purely just spinning, since it's not focused on knitting or crocheting or weaving or any of that. It's purely a spinning conference and spinning magazine. So I definitely am going to share her information so you could see that, but I'd be curious to know if like there's other stuff in your areas, if that's not something you were familiar with, or if there's other things that maybe the rest of us aren't familiar with. I'd love to hear about that. So like if you want to leave a comment, I'd be happy to share about it next week. I think it's important to share these resources and information, especially for people who are learning, since this activity, spinning in general, is such a solitary activity, and it's not like knitting, so it's not as portable. And weaving can be kind of portable, but it's also very much a solitary activity. So like being able to have resources for those two things is really great, and I think really important, especially for those learning, now that weaving and spinning isn't like an everyday activity in the home, and it's something that you kind of have to have a mentor for, or at least have resources for, to pick up and be successful and learn with. So like I said, I'll be sharing Roberta's account and her information. I definitely recommend you following her. She's got really great insight into a lot of different things, and she's very talented. She's just a really, really great person. I love her. But for, in particular, the Ply Away stuff that she just recently posted, that's about it that I have to share with y'all. I hope you have a good week and that you're enjoying the warmer weather if you have warmer weather, and that you're staying safe and careful, and that you are taking really good care of yourself, because it's still a really not fun time out in the world. And I will be talking to you guys next week, and whether that's a little early or not, but I'll definitely be talking to you next week, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.